Folks, I'm going to go on and call us to order. I'm going to ask, we haven't done this before, I'm going to ask Director Free to open us up in prayer.
Will, and I will really try to get this through the ceiling here this evening, so
All
we'll
right.
do that. Okay. Hello, God. Just thank you for this day, and just thank you for the group that's attending this meeting. Just please be with the planning commissioners as they deliberate and do the business of looking at these different projects. God, I just ask significant blessing on our community, and be with the people in our community that are hurting and that are dealing with difficult things. God, I just ask for your intervention to give them hope, to give them relief, and to give them your blessing. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Ms. Shin, will you call the roll, please?
Altizer?
Here.
Evans? Here. Hardwick?
Here.
Hasty?
Here.
Longmire? Here. Martin?
Here.
Slattery's absent. Silkwood?
They have dropped this.
Coker?
Here.
All attend.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the acceptance of the agenda. I think that I'm going to confer with the director for just a second. I'm going to entertain a motion that we have an acceptance of the agenda. Before I do that, we're just going to note on here that the owner has withdrawn the items for the public hearing and the first item under the development plan. So with that noted, entertain a motion of the acceptance of the agenda as presented. I have a motion from Commissioner Silkwood. Can I get a second, please? A second from Commissioner Altizer. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Here. Yes. Yep. And we have one abstention from Commissioner Evans down there, if that'd be noted on that, please. And with that, the motion carries. Next on the agenda, so we will not have the public hearing because that has been withdrawn on that, but we will have public comment times for agenda items only. This is a new thing. It follows state law that was passed this past session. We will not have public, this is the first time doing this, that we have just public hearings, or it's not public hearing, we have public comments with each one of these meetings. The first, we're going to divide this up into two. We'll have at the beginning of our meetings public comments on agenda items, and at the end, public comments on anything that anybody wants to speak about. You have to sign up ahead of time. But we have one person who has signed up, Mr. Scott Denny. Would you come to the podium and introduce yourself? And when you step up, I think you've done this before, but if you haven't, just for everybody else, just introduce yourself, say your address, and say your address where you live here in town, please.
My name is Scott Denny, and I live at 121 Windcrest Way in Hendersonville. So the reason that I came forward tonight was just to recommend and encourage that you all consider the offer by the Southview Professional Group to put a new sign at the entrance to Windcrest. We had 2 meetings there in the neighborhood, and we had 54 attendees at the first meeting. We had 24 attendees at the second meeting, and I think everyone was in favor of it except for about 4 people. And we feel that it is a nice structure that they're offering to build, and that it's something fair for the neighborhood. They're going to maintain it, and it will allow us to do away with an old sign that's probably a problem to all of us. So that's all I have to say. Thank you,
Mr. Denny. And as Mr. Denny was the only speaker signed up for public comments, this is a little bit different, so I'm going to ask for a little parliamentary guidance on this. Do we need to declare, this wasn't a hearing, do I need to declare this closed, or how do I need to handle this?
No, this will just be an agenda item, so once anyone that signed up has spoken, we'll just move down to the next agenda item. And it's a little bit different. We're going to have items where public comment for anything on the agenda at the first, as we're dealing with it right now. And then there's another sheet, nobody signed up for it tonight, But at the end of the meeting, if there's something somebody wants to bring to the Planning Commission's attention, they'll have that opportunity at the end of the meeting as well. So.
Thank you, Director. With that, next item on the agenda is the minutes from our last meeting. I assume everybody's got an opportunity to look over those. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our June 6th meeting. We have a motion from Commissioner Longmire. Do I have a second anywhere on that? All right. Thank you, Commissioner Hasty. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Yep. Any opposition?
Abstain.
Yep. And we have an abstention from Commissioner Altizer, who was not here, who was absent that. But with that, motion carries and the minutes are approved. Next item is our consent agenda. And does anybody wish to pull anything off the consent agenda or say anything before we make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Hearing none, I'm going to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. We have a motion from Commissioner Silkwood. Can I get a second? Second, I think that was Commissioner Martin. Was that? Okay. Commissioner, will you call the roll on this, please?
Altizer,
Yes.
Evans,
Present.
Hardwick,
Yes.
Hasty,
Yes.
Longmire, Martin,
Yes.
Silkwood, Coker.
Yes.
All open.
Thank you. Next item, as we mentioned, the development plan from the triangle has been withdrawn, so we will go on to item 9. This is, we go with site plans. First on is for Crane Wallace Warehouse. Timothy and Sydney were working on this, and do we have a representative for the developer here on that tonight? Saw on Facebook that Jared was in Fort Worth, so I know he's not here, but that's...
I'm the other half of it.
Okay, would you step to the podium, please? Or just be ready to speak. I'm going to let staff present this first, but we'd like for you to speak as well on that. But with that, Timothy or Sydney, whoever wants to get us going here on this.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. This project is located at 1200 Avondale Road, which is a vacant, but a little bit more than 1 acre parcel. This will be a 7,900 square foot, one-story facility for a contractor office storage facility. The property is zoned heavy commercial. If y'all know where Nashville Tempered Glass is, this is across the road from that. So Nashville Tempered Glass is that large building up there in the blue. Subject property again is HC. And then there's the property to the west of it is also zoned HC. This parcel is on the edge, the eastern edge of the city limits. So that vacant parcel you see just to the right of the subject parcel is outside the city, but it is a residential lot. The applicants are requesting 4 waivers. I'll just go through those one by one. The first one has to do with the required buffer width. Our zoning ordinance requires a 20-foot wide landscape buffer. So there along the east edge, or the right edge, is where that buffer would be required. They are proposing an actual buffer width that ranges from between 6.5 feet at the street to about 15.5 feet towards the back. The ordinance does allow, without any kind of waivers, the ordinance allows the required 20 feet width to be reduced by up to 1/3 or down to 13.5 feet if they provide a wood privacy fence and landscaping. And then the width could be reduced down to half or 10 feet if they provided a masonry wall within that area. However, they're not proposing either a fence or a wall. They're just requesting for that reduction of the waiver, or sorry, reduction of the width to 6.5 to 15.5 feet. The second request is for their overhead service doors in commercial zones, overhead service doors are not supposed to face a public street. Now, the industrial zoning that's just across the street, that does allow overhead doors to face the street. But this one, this lot is zoned heavy commercial, so it's supposed to abide by those regulations. The natural tempered glass building, I don't believe it has any overhead doors facing the street. It may have one or two towards the east end. However, if y'all are familiar with that long building there to the west where Master's Gym is, they've got, I think, over 30 overhead doors facing Avondale. That's also in HC zoning. So they're asking to be allowed to have those doors facing the street. The third waiver request, our ordinance requires in commercial zones that at least 60% of the facade facing a street have storefront or glazing. The applicant has provided about 7% and are requesting a waiver of that requirement. I would just point out, referring again back to that facility that has the Master's Gym, lots of overhead doors, that does not meet the glazing requirement. They do have some, I would estimate probably maybe 10% glazing, something like that on that structure. The natural tempered glass, which is in the industrial zoning across the street, that does not have the same requirement. There's no glazing percentage required in that zoning. The fourth waiver request, the ordinance does not allow metal siding on commercial buildings. They have provided brick and stone on the front facing Avondale and on the sides. However, on the rear that backs up to the railroad track, they are requesting to be allowed to do metal siding there. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Timothy. Sir, could you introduce yourself and anything that you'd like to add to that?
My name's James Wallace, so I'm the other half of a partnership.
Yes.
To be quite honest, this man right here is the one that knows a whole lot more about it than me.
Okay.
And I'm gonna let him take my place.
All right, that was good timing.
Good timing, just in time.
All right.
How y'all? I'm Jared Crane.
Do you have anything that you want to add? I know you just walked in, you're on the spot on that.
Yeah, my bad.
Okay.
So they introduced the four things that they're talking with the buffers.
Yeah.
The doors, glazing on the overhead doors, the glazing,
Right,
and then the metal on the back.
right.
The four things that they're asking for variance.
Variance on, yeah. So just the way that this lot lays out, there's very limited ways that we can utilize the building for its just best use. And we've driven around. Of course, I've been in this community since I was young, and there's a lot of buildings in that area that have doors facing the road and that are used for pulling in whatever it might be, large trucks or just any trailers, anything you might want to use. And so that's just the best use for us in that lot. Otherwise, you're limited to like a office, kind of retail area with all the glazing and everything, and that's just not what that area is conducive for. And so that's what we're asking for, that variance there. The buffer is just a size of the lot issue. We don't mind meeting halfway on that and doing as much buffering as we can. I realize that the lot to the left is I think as of right now, residential. I can't imagine that it'll stay that way. But I do understand that people don't want to necessarily be looking at a building, so we'll be happy to meet that as the best we can. And then as far as the glazing goes, if we do the doors, there's not much room for the additional glazing. So I don't know how we meet halfway on that, but if there is a way, we'd be happy to.
Thank you.
All right.
I'll open it up to questions, comments from commissioners. Commissioner Hardaway.
So will you guys be occupying this, or are you building it to lease out?
Building it to lease out, I'm not going to say that we wouldn't occupy a portion of it, possibly, just depending on what the interest is. my personal businesses are too large for this site, so it wouldn't be any of mine. And, you know, I can't speak for James, but I mean, where our plan is to lease this out. And maybe all or in portions, just depends on, we would love to lease it all out to one person.
Sure. So I read where there will be office space in there as well.
Yes.
So, looking at the plan, it just was kind of curious how you're gonna lay your offices out in there where there's a dock door walking into every bay. What is the distance between the man doors and the overhead doors where you can lay your office but still be able to pull a truck or whatever in there?
Sure. The only thing that might, you know, because this we're kind of treating it as a shell building and then a tenant build out type deal. So the only thing that would change as far as the front overhead doors would be, if you see the skinnier portion, it'd be on my left. If you're looking at it, you know, the deeper portions I think would stay front overhead doors no matter what. We may have to come back if somebody did want to do office space. They would put it in that smaller, I believe it's 1,200 square foot, those two blocks to the left. Well, looking at it from this way, it'd be the 2 blocks to the right, or it'd be the 2 doors to the right. I would, you know, would be willing to, you know, take those doors out and add some glazing and because that's your most apparent place that you would use as office space.
Okay. That's all
Commissioner Silkwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question is more for Mr. Witten. So in the comments here, in staff comments, that you talk about that obviously the buffer zone is not the correct width or what's required for the zoning ordinance, but how does the landscaping, that they're providing not meet the ordinance? What did you mean by that? I guess some clarification is what I'm asking.
Sure. So the ordinance mandates a particular number of trees and evergreen shrubs that go within that buffer. And it would it's supposed to run the full length of the buffer. So per that staff comment, regardless of the waiver request, they would still need to provide that landscaping, the full length of the buffer with the required number of trees and shrubs. Did that answer your question?
It does, thank you. I'm actually fine with the waiver for the width of the buffer. I think what you said makes a lot of sense with the way the lot would lay out, but I would like to see you all provide the landscaping, the full width right there, just
Sure.
Because, as you said, it may not remain a residence, but it is currently a
Right.
residence.
Understood.
So,
That'd be no
just
problem.
speaking for me personally, not for the whole board, but if you were willing to meet us there, I'd be willing to vote yes on that waiver.
Perfect.
Other questions, comments from commissioners?
I do
Commissioner?
have one more, just,
Commissioner Hardwick?
so in that you're going to be leasing this out to businesses, the fact that it's not zoned industrial, is that going to hinder your leasing? And that's really more for a staff comment.
Probably not. There will be some limitations because there are some uses that aren't allowed in heavy commercial. But I think most of the uses that they would be looking to do, a lot of probably contractor office related things, those are allowed, I believe, in heavy commercial in this kind of setting. So that would probably, it sounds like the majority of what they would want to do. But some heavier industrial type uses would not be allowed.
And it's not a big enough building.
It's not gonna be an issue for you? I mean,
No, sir.
I love the product. I think it's really needed. I think you'll have it leased up before you get it built. I think the lot next door will be, since it's not in the city, it's not gonna come to us, but it's gonna get turned into industrial. It's never gonna be built residential.
I agree.
And that's a 4-acre tract.
Right.
There'll be a building on there before too long.
Right.
Especially with you doing what you're gonna do. So, do we want to go through all of these waivers individually, or do we want to group them into one? I know last month we did them individually, but I'll defer that to you guys.
That's a question for the board. I tend to prefer to do them one-on-one when we think there's going to be some contention on some things, but I'm willing to test the will of the board, and let's try to group them. And if we want to go that route, if we can do them all as one, if you want to make a motion to try that, we can do that. based upon the feedback by here, I think it's an endeavor worth trying on that, so.
So I will make a motion that we group all 4 waivers into one and vote to approve them, and with all staff comments.
We have a
And
motion.
the comment about the landscaping that Ms. Silkwood talked about.
Yeah. We have a motion from Commissioner Hardwick which I'll second then on that. And so, Ms. Shin, will you call the roll, please?
Altizer,
Yes.
Evans? Yes. Hardwick,
Yes.
Hasty,
Yes.
Longmire,
Yes.
Martin? Yes. Silkwood? Coker?
Yes.
All
All right, thank you. Before you sit down though, congratulations, but were you in Fort Worth today? That's what it looked like on
was.
Facebook. Good Lord. I'm glad you made it here on time. That was excellent timing
Came
then
on
on
well.
that, so, but thank you.
Yeah, appreciate y'all.
Yes, sir.
Thank y'all for coming.
Next item on the agenda is floor and decor. Timothy, this looks like this was your project as well. And again, I'll ask representatives from the developers to come up and just kind of stand by, and we'll think this is a revisit from last month. So Timothy, if you'll get us started on this, please.
Sure. Yeah, so this was before y'all last month. The site plan was approved. However, they had a waiver request to waive 66 parking spaces and to allow them to provide 234 versus the 300 required. That waiver request was denied. So they're back before you tonight, having gone back and revised their site plan to maximize the amount, the number of parking spaces that they could possibly get on the site. So this proposal, they will be providing 257 parking spaces. That's an increase of 23, which would leave them requesting a waiver for 43 spaces. I believe they have a presentation to kind of go through their methodology and
Thank you, Timothy. If y'all would just quickly introduce yourselves again. I know we did this last month, but just welcome you back. Just
Sure.
Before you start the presentation.
Brandy Crawford with Floor and Decor, 2500 Windy Ridge Parkway, Atlanta, Georgia.
Mitchell Fisbara. I'm a development consultant for Floor and Decor. Work with Centerpoint Integrated Solutions out of Denver, Colorado.
I'm Joseph McCown with Haynes Gibson Associates, a civil engineer out of Lawrenceville, Georgia.
So we won't be long tonight. As you guys remember, we were here last month and we did not get our parking variance approved. So want to come back and represent our updated site plan and new parking count and hopefully receive your approval tonight. But just to give you guys a bit of background on the site. So our proposed site is located on Indian Lake Boulevard. It's about 6 acres. There is a wetland and 2 streams. So there are some challenges in developing the site. Even with that being said, we have taken the time to redesign, we regrouped, and we're coming back with this new site plan. So this next slide shows our previous layout in red and our current layout shown in black. So we were able to carve out some new parking spaces primarily along the sides and at the rear of the site. So our net increase is 23 spaces, and so our new request is for a variance from 300 parking spaces to 257 parking spaces, which is about 14% reduction in parking. The parking requirement here requires us to provide 4 spaces for every 1,000 square feet of gross floor area, which requires a total of 300 parking spaces. In a lot of jurisdictions across the country, we're allowed to calculate parking based on the use of the building. So this slide shows how the Floor and Decor building is actually used. So in the purple area, you see the retail square footage. That's 57,803 square feet. So taking that retail square footage, that would yield out to 232 parking spaces alone. If we took the office square footage at 2,562 square feet, we would be required to have 8 parking spaces. If we took the warehouse square footage in green, that's a bit over 14,000 square feet. That'd be a total of 15 parking spaces. So taking those 3 different uses of the building, we'd be required to have 255 parking spaces based on the building's usage. So we propose to provide 257 spaces total. So that 257 that we propose to provide, compared to the usage of the building, we would actually exceed the parking by 2 parking spaces. Now, we understand that we're not allowed to count parking in that way, and we have to provide the full 300 parking spaces. And so we're before you tonight requesting the slight reduction in parking. We submitted to you guys, to the board, staff, and the commission, our parking study. So in that study, we had a national consultant take a look at Floor & Decor's highest performing stores across the country. And we'll just take maybe 2 examples from that study. So the first example is our store in Alexandria, Virginia. That store is right outside of Washington, D.C. It's a much larger footprint. So that store is over 93,000 square feet. So it's larger than what we're proposing here in Hendersonville. But at the peak period, which is a Saturday afternoon, there were only 76 cars parked in the parking lot. So if we applied that same data to our site plan here, which shows 257 parking stalls, there would be 181 empty parking spaces in the Hendersonville parking lot. Right, so applying the same data with the 76 cars that were parked, there would be 181 empty parking spaces. So it really shows that the demand for parking at a Floor & Decor store is much less than what the parking requirement actually is. The next slide just gives you a graphic of what that looks like. So this is data from our Doral, Florida store. Doral, Florida, the building square footage is a lot larger than we're proposing here in Hendersonville. That store is almost 90,000 square feet in area. At the peak parking time, which is a Saturday afternoon, there were 80 cars parked in the parking lot. So if we took that same data point and applied it to the Hendersonville site plan, which is what you see here, you see that the first few rows of parking are full, but the parking along the sides and the rear is empty, which shows that the demand is much lower than the parking requirement. At the last hearing, a question came up that related to future uses of the building. If the Floor & Decor decided to close at some point, not operate, what could the building be used for, and could those uses meet parking? So we took a look at the zoning ordinance, uses that were allowed, and what their parking requirement would be. So there are plenty of uses that would be allowed either by right or via rezoning, and that they would be able to meet the parking requirement. So just to name off a few of them: office, motor vehicle dealership, financial institution, general business, personal service establishment. So there are several uses that could be allowed either by right or via rezoning in the building, on the site. In those sites, all of these have a lower requirement for parking than the Floor & Decor use would have. The next slide just gives you a graphic, again, of what that looks like. So we took our building square footage. We divided it up into 3 different uses. So 1/3 of it is office, 1/3 of it is financial institution, the remaining 1/3 of it is a dental clinic. So those uses each have its own parking requirement, and that adds up to 234 parking spaces. We're proposing 257 parking spaces. So those uses collectively would be able to meet the requirement, and there would be additional parking spaces that would be extra spaces on site. So based on our site redesign, our proposed number of parking spaces is at 257. Based on the data from our parking study and the information that shows that the building and site could accommodate future uses, if that were the case, we request the parking reduction, and we'll be happy to answer any questions and address any comments that you may have.
Thank you. Commissioner Evans?
My question is for staff, in consideration of what they've said, and in consideration with of a potential afterlife or a second use. What does the staff think about the number of parking spaces for this building?
Yeah, I think that the justifications given for the waiver are creditable and have a lot of merit to them. So staff is comfortable with the request and thinks that it would be, it should Floor and Decor, after many years, go somewhere else. I think there is ample opportunity for this to be redeveloped into several other things that would be good for the city.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. We'll recognize,
That's okay.
no, I will not recognize Commissioner Silkwood. That we have a motion and a second.
We couldn't hear the motion.
We have a motion to approve.
Couldn't hear it.
Yeah. We have a motion to approve.
We could not hear the motion.
Okay. John, can you repeat the motion, please?
Based on the comments by the staff and the information given tonight, I move we approve the waiver for the 257 parking spaces.
And I'll second that motion.
We have a motion from Commissioner Evans and a second from Commissioner Altizer. Ms. Shen, will you call the roll, please?
Altizer?
Yes.
Evans? Yes. Hardwick?
Yes.
Hasty?
Yes.
Longmire?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Silkwood? Coker?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Congratulations. And want to just thank you all for your diligence in working with us too. And y'all have been good to work with and we appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is site plan for Jackson Townhomes. Site plan amendment for Jackson Townhomes being brought by the direction of the Planning Commission for further steps. Do we have a representative from the developer here on that tonight? We do. Grant, will you get us started on this, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The owners worked with their engineer, Greenlit Design, and consulted with the city codes department. And they came up with a solution that would appear to be significantly closer to the approved site plan, and which we think will be very, very helpful in that. And you can compare that on page 4 of the staff report for Jackson Townhomes. The fourth page goes into, it shows the approved plan and it shows the plan as constructed. On the first page here with the update of the report, this shows their proposed solution to kind of meet in the middle there. And it adds back the sidewalk to the south side that was all asphalt previously and or concrete previously, and so that's and then kind of a minimal grass strip in there to not meet that requirement, but come a lot closer to what was actually approved. On the north side, which was one of the more problematic things about that site plan, or about the site that was as constructed, the two sets of stairs that went all the way to the roadway, those are being proposed to be reduced back. And basically what they've done is, in speaking with the codes department, they've tried to come up with what they feel is the minimum allowable stair width, and basically they're going to go back and with this, they're going to tear out all those sets of stairs and then make those comply with the minimum code requirement, and which will give the much closer to the allowed room and the landings needed for the end of those stairs, and it does appear that it would be a much better situation with this proposal. So, so yeah, I think they just and their consultant is here as well.
So,
Thank you,
Yeah, I
Andy.
think we had you introduce yourself.
Sure. Andy Leith with Greenlee Design. And as Grant stated, this current proposal is very close to what was approved with the sidewalk on the south side. And we did add a grass strip in. It's not as wide as what was approved, but it's as wide as it can get with what's currently being proposed. And then the north side did not have the sidewalk on the original approved. We only did a sidewalk on one side, what was originally approved, but it does pull the steps back off the road. So there's a good 4 foot, minimum of 4 foot on that north side too as well for ingress, egress. But I'll be happy to answer your questions as best I can.
All right, thank you. Questions, comments from commissioners? Commissioner Martin.
Thanks for coming and speaking with us. Did you talk to an architect and get everything sorted out on the intermediate stair landing?
So Chance, the developer, which I guess he's got caught up, is supposed to be here. I can't speak for him on that. I can only speak for myself, and he was supposed to. But I did not personally.
When he gets here, the issue with the stair landing it's not 12 foot. Apparently that's commercial. It's a 12'7" under the residential code. Tell him, on matters of life safety, it's unheard of for a jurisdiction to budge, and stair landings are there to prevent people from tripping and falling down and falling the whole way down, whereas a stair landing would catch them. So we're thinking about kids, we're thinking about elderly. When you rework the stairs, are you putting in a stair landing? The drawings that you submit don't look like they're there.
No,
Has there been any talk about it?
No, I mean, I can tell you what I was instructed to do, which was to pull the steps back 4 feet. And that's what we have presented to you tonight, was then pulled back 4 feet. Here he is.
Oh.
Sorry, guys.
So, Chance, they've got a question about some codes compliance stuff, and I'm sorry. if
That's
you
all
don't
right. So
mind.
the site plan looks reasonable. The concern is from me, life safety. We talked last time about an intermediate stair landing because elderly people or people who rent it, who have kids, and they run down the stairs. That stair landing is there so that they don't fall like the entire 15 feet, which is what I think on the picture it looked like. And so there was a stair landing to prevent that.
Yeah.
But I heard that you're reworking the stairs, so I wanted to see if that was going to be incorporated.
It is, and I think Keith was out there. We talked with Greg was there. We told him what we were doing. We actually eliminated a couple stairs. So it does meet the code requirement from the landing to the bottom on the length of the staircase, because we did eliminate some of the staircases.
Okay, is there a diagram or something? But it's within the 12 feet?
Yeah, we hadn't received a side view of that. We'd requested that.
Right.
But we hadn't received that. Generally, as Grant had said, the staff is generally, the planning staff, the public works, and the codes department, they are generally okay with the solution, but, that's pending on, we need to see the specific side view elevation of where those landings are and how that's going on. I think with the codes department, with Greg and the codes department,
Right.
then I think Chance has worked with him to where that, Greg feels that it will meet those requirements, but, we're yet to see for each staircase to see that side view kind of elevation to show what all those different dimensions are.
And I just want to be clear. So, that is a codes enforcement stuff.
Yes.
This is more appearance, look, make sure we meet
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to be. I'm not trying to, but.
Right.
Because we're not going to get a CO if it doesn't meet a code a code.
Yeah, with the stairs, it would have to meet our codes department, for life safety. That wouldn't be something we would do at the planning staff or public works would do. So if you wanted to approve it, then you could approve it as submitted with the caveat that as long as it meets the proper code requirements by the codes director. And that, you could do that. I'd rather have had the drawing so that we could have had that resolved before this evening. But I don't have that to provide.
Commissioner Evans?
Well, there aren't too many good options where you are. There aren't any inexpensive options, I understand that, and planning is what we do here. Right. And my concern at this point, do you have an architect for phase 2?
Do we have, yeah, we'll be obviously, and I talked to Keith about this too, when we start building phase 2, once we sell these, we will come in with an architect that has the detailed steps on it and that will resubmit with permitting. I think I'd already spoke with Keith about that we would be resubmitting that when we start to pull permits for the back.
Yeah, before we sign off on the zoning permit for the building permit on all the rear units, we're gonna need to see what each step, what it's gonna look like, where it's gonna hit, and we're gonna need to see that so we don't repeat the issues that were here.
Yep.
Well, in talking to some of the staff, I understand that this is about as good as we're going to get. And with that in mind, I would move to approve based on staff's receipt and approval of the drawings that we haven't seen yet. Hate to pass it off to the staff, but we just don't have, we don't have everything we need at this point.
So you have, Commissioner Evans, your motion is to approve based upon approval by codes and approval by staff. Is that your motion? Okay. Okay.
That works.
I'd like to ask a question before we move
Commissioner
on.
Hardwick, go ahead.
So he obviously was looking for a drawing, knowing this was going to be back on the agenda tonight.
Right.
Is there a reason why he didn't get the drawing?
We were working on it. Andy got the site plan corrected. He has the third party that does the 3D imaging or the 3D renderings. And they obviously they didn't come through with the drawings like they said they were going to.
It was a tight time frame from the time we were in vacation season. It just hit at the wrong time. It hit at the wrong time for this meeting, to be honest with you.
Commissioner Hasty?
Based on the past history of this project and the fact that we don't have the side view, the drawings that the staff has asked for, I will be voting no.
We have a motion on the floor that needs a second. Do we have a second for that? I'll second the motion so we can have some action on it. Commissioner Evans, will you restate your motion again, just for clarification's sake?
My motion is to approve the changes to the plan, subject to approval by codes and the life safety issues, as well as the receipt of the drawings by the planning staff and approval by staff.
Can we get you one more time? Your mic wasn't on for half of that. So.
I don't know if I can do that again the same way. My motion is to approve the submittal of the latest drawings, subject to approval by codes and approval by staff of the drawings that we have yet to receive.
Thank you. I will second that motion. And Ms. Shen, will you call the roll, please?
Altizer,
No.
Evans,
Yes.
Hardwick,
No.
Hasty,
No.
Longmire,
No.
Martin. No. Silkwood.
No.
Coker.
Yes.
Motion fails.
Yeah, so with that not passing this evening, then, I mean, the only thing is for it to be placed back on the agenda. We won't be placing it back on the agenda until we get some images showing what each one of those stairs are going to be, and then getting confirmation, from the codes department, after we get that yes, this is good, then I think it can come back to the, back to the planning commission at this point.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next up on the agenda item is item 10, just the catch-all other. We have a resolution recommending acceptance of the completed streets of Durham Farms, Phase 2, Section 26, Hendersonville, Sumner County, Tennessee. And flip over. Okay. You want to do that, Keith?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay.
Yeah, these are some of the streets, and I think there's a map here that shows where those are in Durham Farms. This item's already been approved by the BOMA Public Works Committee, and then now it's going to us. Approval for recommendation here this evening will then move forward directly to the next BOMA meeting for acceptance.
Okay. With that, can I have a motion to approve the resolution as presented? We have a motion from Commissioner Silkwood, a second from Commissioner Altizer. Caitlin, will you call the roll, please?
Altizer,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Hardwick,
Yes.
Hasty,
Yes.
Longmire,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Silkwood, Coker.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next up is item 11, staff level projects approved. I'll let Director Free run through these.
Just hit a couple of the highlights. I'll do the approved and the projects pending next to it. I can answer any questions on any of these, but just some of the ones to pull out. Dunkin' Donuts exterior remodel, that's right up the street here on Indian Lake Boulevard. The Hendersonville Dental Office, minor revision, site plan. The Lux, adding some EV chargers at the Lux. Also, Whataburger doing their final plat. That is moving forward, and we did finalize their elevations. So they made significant improvements to those elevations. Chick-fil-A moving forward with a major redesign of their drive-through. I think maybe this is the third iteration of that, and this actually will be. I think it will improve things substantially. It's going to add a lot more queuing on site. Also, Rockland Road Kennel, a site plan. The Tesla charging station, we're still working with that issue, and those are some of the major issues that are there. And I can answer any question, me or the staff can, on any of those.
Any questions, comments from commissioners? Hearing none or seeing none, we will go to item 13 for planning director comments.
What is the 201 Civil Drive? It's
Two-
on the Old Town Commercial side.
Yes. Grant, is that the one that you had, 201 Chivel, on that parking lot addition?
Yes, that was the office that was at the corner of, basically, it was a residential to office conversion at the corner of Chivel and Campus. So it's the other one of those projects that we had. They agreed to install the sidewalk and agreed to all the staff comments. So we were I believe that was a staff approval as far as that goes, and I think it's already actually been approved. So, but yeah, they agreed to all the comments. So should really help. I think they've already actually started working on tearing out some of that undergrowth and brush over there, and it's looking a lot better.
Thank you, Grant. And that is a part of, the discussions we had a couple of months ago about whether sidewalks or no sidewalks and some of those things. Actually, the way things are coming together, we're going to have a pretty connected sidewalk system as things have progressed here over the last couple of months within that area. Then director comments. Okay, I'll go right here to the director comments. I did have three things I wanted to cover. One thing is we had a lot of questions about near water. Everybody can kind of see the construction that's occurring out there by the older Waffle House near on Main Street and the 386 interchange spur. And some different questions have come up, and just real briefly, Grant has kind of looked back into the file and just wanted to answer a couple of questions. A lot of different information floats around out there about some stuff, and so when we find that out, I'll try to bring some of that at the director comments, just to try to address, and bring some factual information to things. But Grant, if you could just share that very briefly of that information.
Thank you, Director Free. Yes, sir. So back whenever that project was approved, I think in 2021, I believe, that project, there was a lot of discussion about the access to that, and that was one of the things, since they really only had one access point, it was a situation where you had to legally approve it with an access, because you can't deny access to a property. But the other item on that was that there was an access easement that had existed since at least 1991 from the Marta Valdez plat, and that extended along the entirety of that property there. So essentially, that was designed, whenever everything was built, it was actually designed to have access through there. Now, probably not to today's standards with going through the parking lot like that, but at the same time, it does allow for 2 drive access lanes there to access that property, which is, for a private street meets our requirements. So we'll say basically that showed a 24-foot, 2 12-foot lanes for 24-foot access to that through the parking lot. And then one other item is there's an access easement that's part of this. Basically, their property to the east, which is still owned by the heirs of Marta Valdez, we can look at that at the time of that development. Whenever that property is developed, we can look at trying to connect that property and provide a second cross access, which is something we always try to look at and try to get folks to do. And in some instances we can require it, in some instances we can't. But in this instance, when I talked to one of the heirs of Marta Valdez earlier in the year about the Westlake plan, just about that piece of property, and at that time he said that there was no plans to build on or sell that property. So that's one of the things where we can't require that access point since they already have an approved access through an approved easement. But we do want to try to encourage them to use that access in the future whenever that is developed. But currently there's no plans to do that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but yeah, I just wanted to go through that and just kind of discuss that. I think that was one of the things that it was a discussion item back a few years ago, and of course, I think some people have talked about that since then, and we just wanted to try to clarify what the issue was there, or how that was resolved.
Thank you, Mr. Green. I appreciate that. I just had 2 other items that I wanted to talk about and get maybe just a little bit of guidance and direction from the Planning Commission. One is the Westlake rezoning. We are moving forward at the staff level on coming up with the language for the Westlake rezoning. And this Westlake rezoning, it includes rezoning portions of Westlake to fall in line with the approved master plan for that area, because we got to change Old Town Commercial and Old Town Residential. So we've got to definitely, at the minimum, we've got to come up with changes to that. And then also, one of the things that we're looking at is we had a lot of commercial areas there that are zoned commercial that we're looking at maybe creating a new commercial zone for that area. And I just kind of wanted to see if the Planning Commission had some direction on that, whether we want to pursue that portion with all of the commercial rezoning, if we actually want to rezone that, or if we want to do something really more with those portions of Westlake commercial, where we're just doing it in the text. You know, the text of the zoning ordinance, where we might have a map, and then it's sort of like an overlay that we say everything within this area, these are some special things that are associated with that on uses and things like that. So we kind of wanted to kind of get some direction from the Planning Commission on that. One thing on those focus areas, one of the things that we're looking at on staff, I think originally we looked at maybe on those focus areas like Free Hill, and then the other one, the dockside focus area. I think we were looking at actually rezoning those properties so that they could have the mixed use. But we're kind of thinking of just creating some potential zones that would be planned development zones, that somebody could still do that, but they would have to go through a planned development process. They wouldn't necessarily be by right where we did that. So I kind of if the Planning Commission could give the staff just a little bit of direction on that, if there's any thoughts on it, that would be very helpful. We're at a point where we got to figure out which way to go forward on the draft of it. And we are looking at, we've got another thing here I'm going to talk about, but looking at the possibility that could be an August work session, or maybe might even be better as a September work session, or a special called work session, when the issue was ready.
Do you have any slides?
No, I'm just looking for, is the commission looking at wanting to do more actual, we're going to do Old Town Commercial and Old Town Residential. So we're going to rezone those areas because we have to have a replacement. But I guess just the simple question is, do you want us to do that and then do tweaks on the zoning ordinance to cover the other things? Or do you want to actually do rezoning of property all up and down West Main Street to make it work with the future land use plan? It's kind of we're at a fork in the road where do we want to go? One would be pretty much supermassive rezoning that would impact all the commercial area over there to make it fit and comply with the future land use plan. The other way would be, it's a little bit less evasive, and it's really doing some mild tweaking of the zoning ordinance text amendments that would get us further down the road on that, but not doing actual rezonings of all of the commercial property on West Main Street.
Commissioner,
I think you'd have more success
Oh, he's not on.
tweaking the zoning ordinance in order to kind of accomplish what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Versus coming up with some massive overall rezoning of commercials. You might push enough of the wrong buttons that we don't get anything. So if we kind of handle it, nonchalantly through tweaking the zoning ordinance, I personally, I'm just one.
Right.
I think you might have more success.
Okay. That's very helpful. Thank you for sharing that.
I think it was Yogi Berra who said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. So, I mean, it might be something to look at a mix of both on that, where it's appropriate, do an overall rezone, but where you need to take an approach like you suggested, Commissioner Hasty suggested, take the path of least resistance then.
Okay.
So.
Now I think that sounds good, and we can definitely do that. I just want to really make sure nobody felt really strong about, no, we need to do a massive rezoning. I know that was always potential, but now we're at a point where we're going to be creating something that, we're eventually going to have a work session on with the Planning Commission, and, we want to have something closer to something that the Planning Commission would find favorable on it as well.
Commissioner Martin?
So, when you talk about massive rezoning, it sounds like that would take a lot more time, and you guys are, I think, 2 months into the 4 months that you guys had projected. I mean, would that not extend the amount of time that we would need to invest?
It could go a little longer, but probably time-wise, we could do either. So, once we're in, we're in, and, you know, it would all follow the same timeline of the process. So, time-wise, it shouldn't drag it out much further. So, you know, it wouldn't be more, but it will be if we're doing massive rezonings of all the commercial property, and it would all be from one zone to one new zone, and a lot of things would stay the same, but you know, you're definitely going to stir up a lot of things when we're doing the rezoning. I mean, it's going to happen in the Old Town commercial and the Old Town residential. But we got to do it. We got to replace that, those two zonings, and where we've done that, where we've got the residential and the mixed use and all that stuff, it's different than what Old Town commercial and Old Town residential is now. So we can't just tweak it with some changes to the zoning ordinance, to the text amendment. We actually have to do some new zones. But so I think I've got a sense from what was said and maybe what was not said, you know, that probably look at that path of rezone what we have to, and then the rest of it, look at what we can do with text amendment changes to get us closer to what the vision is for that area. And I think we can achieve that doing that. Additionally, separate from the Westlake, but it's going to go along the same process.
Director, just one more
go ahead.
question on it before we get the final sign off on that. Is doing it kind of more under the radar, it's not the best description, but more low key on that, would that in any way impact any ECD incentives that may potentially come along with anything? I wouldn't think that it would. I just want.
Yeah, I don't think it would. And then one thing we would do is, even if we're doing text amendments, which wouldn't necessarily trigger the need to provide notice to individual affected property owners. And in this case on Westlake, we would notify all the affected property owners if we're doing text changes that are going to impact them, you know, on a large scale. We would let them know. But I don't think it would hurt us on anything with the economic development. And in addition, with this process that we're doing, you know, we've got a lot of miscellaneous things that we're going to be looking at as well with the text amendment. So we're going to have zoning map amendment, and we're going to have zoning text amendment. So we're going to have two things going on simultaneously. Most of that's going to have to deal with Westlake, but there's some other things that we want the Planning Commission to consider as well. Some of those things would be in our SR1 zoning, that's 12,500 square foot minimum lot size. We would like the consideration to maybe increase that lot size to 15,000 square foot. We think that's reasonable, and we think that would be a sound thing to consider. There's some additional things where we're undertaking a deep review of our parking requirements, you know, making sure that residential parking requirements are what they should be, and our commercial and industrial parking requirements are what they should be. You know, this evening we did the floor and decor. You know, where those numbers came from that set what our ordinance is saying, you know, what the parking should be for a particular building or a particular use. They've just been there for a long time, and I don't even know the origin of them. It could have been from some other city. But we're taking a whole fresh look at it, and we're going to have, you know, the possibility of some different parking requirements that are going to maybe be more appropriate. And then, and two things, making sure we're not over-parking commercial and industrial-related things, and then making sure we have the appropriate, possibly increased parking for all residential. For example, even though we might have efficiency, you know, we're not really building any apartments necessarily, but but if we had efficiency apartment or a one-bedroom apartment, either one of those should be 2 parking spaces. It shouldn't be 1.5 or a half or anything like that. It should be 2 parking spaces. We definitely don't want to increase the usage of property by filling it all up with parking. But on the other hand, we don't want to create parking problems in our community, especially if we do have some more higher density type housing. We want to make sure that it's appropriately parked. So, we're looking at that, and we're also going to have some things with some particular uses that we may suggest that we move to conditional uses instead of permitted uses and different things. So we've got some different things to look at that. So I wanted to share that. The other thing is we did have a good, very active, and we had an active workshop for the Stop 30 Road Future Land Use and Transportation Plan. And I would like to get a little direction, if possible, from the Planning Commission on how to move forward. We're definitely at a point where I think the staff, and I think maybe the majority of the planning commissioners were there at that meeting. It was recorded, so I'm sure if you weren't here, you probably have seen the meeting. So we've put some things out there. There is no doubt we have heard from the public on kind of what the public's thoughts are about that, and really that's what that process is about. That particular area, in addition to Westlake, but the Stop 30 area is an area where we have a lot of undeveloped land, and it's gonna have a lot of development pressure, over the next 10 to 15 years. And we have a plan for out there that was created in 2009. But what this process will allow us to do is to check to see, hey, are we still good with that? Is there any changes that we want to look at making at that? And then at the same time, we're looking at Stop 30 Road, because we want to make sure that we don't over-improve Stop 30, if we're not going to have the development that's going to necessarily trigger an overbuild of Stop 30. And then on the same other way is if there's more development in that area, which I don't see that's going to be the case with the input that we received, then we don't want to under-improve Stop 30, where it doesn't have capacity. So these two things are very tied in this future land use plan and transportation plan, is what's going to happen to Stop 30, and then what all kinds of different things do we want to consider. Some of those things that were in the meeting that were very strong was, getting rid of the mandatory connection. Doesn't mean there couldn't be a connection, but the mandatory connection in the transportation plan of Creekwood, of saying if something developed, it's going to have to connect to Creekwood. That was something I think people felt very strongly about. I think there was also a strong feeling about density. We were looking at really just doing something that was along SR1, was in the proposals, where you had 3 units an acre on most things and an acre on others. I think probably overwhelmingly, something more like on the areas that were residential, actually making them minimum 1 acre for the future land use, which would reduce the potential for future density there as well. But kind of where we're at is we haven't done anything to change the plan at this time. We're looking at having a work session with the Planning Commission, but we could go a couple of different ways on that. We could wait until we do a work session, which we could group it with this rezoning and maybe do it in September the 19th. We could do that and create the final draft of the plan based on the work session, or do something different if there was guidance, from the Planning Commission to do something different, to go ahead and create another draft of it. So,
I'd like to handle it the work session on that.
Okay.
We would intended to do one that was just timing of summer. It just didn't fall right on that. But I think we need to do that. We owe it to the folks that live in that area. We didn't take that same approach that we did with the Westlake to really vet things out. And quite frankly, having a little bit more time doing it, I think that's good to let that digest then on that. So I would think that's the way I'd like to see it approached. Is just
Okay.
take what was presented to the public and take that in the work session then on that and then go
Okay.
from there.
Okay, that sounds good. On a work session, so we're talking about that, would this be something you would prefer for Westlake and for Stop 30? Because I think we could maybe do it in one work session. Would it be something you'd want to do at a August work session or a September work session, or separate them out and do them separately?
I think it'd be good to combine them.
Okay. If we combine them, then I think maybe a September the 19th work session, because by that time, then I think, tell me if I'm wrong, Grant, I think we can have the Westlake rezoning. I think we can have all that fully developed with the direction that we have tonight.
Yeah, I think so.
On that.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So we would have, if we did that on September the 19th work session, then we would have the Stop 30 coming just as it is right now, no changes. So there wouldn't be any changes until we get to the work session. And then out of the work session, then we'd have clear direction on how to make that final draft. And then get that out, then make that final draft, get it out to the public and start that process. And then at that same meeting, then the planning staff would have a final draft of the zone changes, of the zone text changes and the map amendment changes for Westlake and some of these other miscellaneous things. And it would all be fully flushed out so that then we could go through that. And then we could make any changes from that to then start, go ahead and start that process, where we bring that to our October meeting for the rezoning.
I think that's a good plan.
Does that sound? And I know that was a lot of things, but that's helpful from the staff standpoint. We got two really big things, going on here at one time, and I just want to make sure that, we're going in the direction that the Planning Commission would like to through the process to get that. And then just keeping in mind that the Stop 30 Future Land Use and Transportation Plan, that starts and stops with the Planning Commission. The issue with the rezonings and the text amendments, that is a recommendation, starts with the Planning Commission, ends with MoMA, making the final decisions on that. So that's it. I know that was a little bit of talking, but that's everything. And thank you all very much for sharing your thoughts with me on that. And that's everything that I had, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Director Freed. Any questions or comments from commissioners before I entertain a motion to adjourn? Nobody signed up for that, so, but thank you, I'll make a note of that. Just for clarification's sake, nobody signed up for the non-agenda items for citizens' comments, so we won't be addressing that because they do have to sign up ahead of time, so there will not be anything for that, but I just want to address that nobody did that. But with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.